Let's podcast alongside Joe Giglio. I'm Joe Ovias. Here it is, Joe. Here's the
Don't do it
Duplin
again.
wine.
Do not do it again.
What do you mean? Well, here's the thing. We got plenty to get into today from the Canes on the brink tonight. LeBron James contemplating retirement. Sara Civian's going to come on through. We got some housekeeping and whatnot. Here's what I realized. That essentially the Canes have not. Oh, I might have put this thing in a little too tight. I might have to I realized that they have not won a conference finals game since this wine was produced, Joe. So I feel like yesterday when we celebrated 3,000 subscribers on YouTube, that we might have uncorked, we might have cursed reversed here with the Duplin Wine 10. And shout out to LK who reminded me it's not muscadine, it's muscadine. So I had to get that eastern part of North Carolina right. Regardless, I am very excited about opening up this 10 and drinking it during the show because this is what's going to turn it around. It's been done before, Joe. It's been done before in the NHL. Canes down 0-3 to the Panthers. We got 2010 with the Flyers. They did it to the Boston Bruins. That's the very famous Peter Laviolette, former Carolina Hurricanes coach. One freaking goal. And then you had Justin Williams, part of that Kings squad in 14, beat the Sharks. There's been two other teams, interestingly enough, Joe, in 2011 that came back from 0-3 situations to force a Game 7 in the West, but those teams came up short. So the bottom line is it can be done, but it has to obviously start tonight.
Yeah, I actually expect the Canes to win tonight. The kind of resiliency that they've had has been their hallmark, and I just don't see them going out like a bunch of simps. I just don't see that happening tonight. And I realize how good Bobrovsky has been. I realize how close these games have been. Rod Brind'Amour as a player and Rod Brind'Amour as a coach, his teams have had the best qualities of a cockroach. You cannot kill them. And just when you think you've gotten rid of them, they come crawling back. And you're like, how did they do that? Why do they keep getting the best of me? Why can't they just go away? So I fully expect the Canes to come out tonight. Let's see their fastball, right? We saw this out on the island in Game 6 when the last time I expected to see it. My Canes radar is actually really, really good. I'll just say that right now. So I expect them. I expect to be there in the building on Friday night for Game 5.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. And I actually wanted to pull up if I can actually go and find it. I had it somewhere, but now I have to go back and find the whole thing. But Rod Brind'Amour, I don't know if you saw the post game from Rod Brind'Amour, but he was kind of my fear, and we saw this in the post game when the Canes were coming off the ice. And you saw, I think it was Jesperi Kotkaniemi who was slamming. It went viral. He slammed his stick. And that just goes to show you the point of frustration right now for the Carolina Hurricanes and what Bobrovsky is doing to them. And I'm with you in the sense that the Carolina Hurricanes tend to be very resilient. As you said, they're kind of cockroach-like. But I do wonder at what point you break. We talked about this with John Forsland on Monday. The Canes have been the ones who have broken teams before, especially when they've been down. I brought up Montreal. I do wonder if yet again there's another Russian goalie that seems to be breaking the Canes. Now, they did get past Sorokin, as somebody pointed out to me, but it's not lost on me that the Canes have had the most amount of frustration against these Russian goalies who they can't get anything past. And here's Rod Brind'Amour following the game on Monday night. And I totally agree with what his sentiment was, that essentially they did everything right. They just couldn't get anything past them.
It's been 3 games. I mean, we can't do much more. I mean, we like how we're playing, clearly. It's just we got to find a way to put one in. And then, defensively, we're giving up nothing, really. In 3 games, you would have said to me, you get one of the highest, the potent offenses you're playing, and you're giving them 20 shots a night. I mean, you'd be pretty happy with. It's just we're creating offense. And I think we hit, felt like we hit a couple posts tonight, 2 or 3, and we're it's there for us. It's just we gotta find a way to put it in. I think we had 1 power play maybe tonight, 1 or 2. 1. that's kind of strange in a game that we're dominating like that. But we didn't do anything with it. That was bad. And then they had a couple power plays in a row there. We did a decent job, and then obviously that's the difference in the game right there. I think it went off Slavo's stick too. It's just the way things are going for us this series. It's kind of, we got to find a way to just break through and give ourselves a chance maybe to get back in this. But it's tough, like you said, because we have played really well.
So there you go. There's Rod Brindamore on the fact that they've pretty much been doing everything they need to do right. Unfortunately, they just couldn't get anything past Bobrovsky.
Yeah, and that Rod is a process guy.
Yeah,
it goes back to his time with Peter Laviolette, and Peter Laviolette was like this strange disciple of John Wooden, which is you believe in the process and not the results. When you do the process right, the results will follow, and that's the frustration I hear in Rod's voice in that clip. We're playing the right way. We like the way that we're playing. You and I have talked many times before. Rod can win a game 7-0 and be upset because it's not the result that bothers him, that he's concerned with. It's the process. So when you have that faith in the process, it is difficult in situations like this where you try to wrestle with, wait a second, we're doing what we want to do, but we're not getting the results that we want. And that's the challenge mentally for the Hurricanes right now. How do you stay on this path, right? Because now you're banging up into Einstein's theory of insanity, right? Well, you keep doing the same thing over and over again,
right?
But you keep getting the same result.
Well,
right?
the hope,
so
I guess
that's where you kind of have to have the fortitude, which this team has always had. That's a bedrock of this team. And I'm not trying to tell you, I'm not trying to Ben Crenshaw this thing. I'm not trying to Terry Francona this thing, Dave Roberts this thing. I'm just telling you, I would be floored tonight if we don't see the Canes fastball. Floored.
Here's my curiosity. You talk about the process and doing things right, and eventually things will get your way. Because there's been a lot of retconning of the Carolina Hurricanes and this season. And I think it started about the 14-minute mark of the third period in this last game, when it was pretty clear that they weren't going to get anything past Bobrovsky. Yeah. And they had multiple opportunities to do so. The Canes and their process creates a lot of opportunities. But the one thing that everybody's been screaming about, and I don't necessarily disagree, has been, do you have the one guy? Do you have the finisher? Coffee is for closers only, right? And I think that's a fair criticism of the Carolina Hurricanes. But at the same time, it's tough to reconcile this criticism of the Hurricanes when they're in the Eastern Conference Finals and they've had another successful season where they've won the division. And we can have big existential questions about, well, what's the difference between a good regular season team and a postseason team when you need that guy to step up? But here's my thing. What are you going to do when the guy who steps up is the goalie on the other team who's going on an all-time heater right now? And it's important to note, and I guess this is where the Carolina Hurricanes have to be hopeful and the resiliency pays off, just like it did in the regular season when everybody was hand-wringing about the lack of goal scoring, and all of a sudden it came in bunches. There was a fear of lack of goal scoring, and it absolutely busted open against the New Jersey Devils, right? So let's not look at the other side too. It's not like the Florida Panthers are scoring a bunch of goals either. These have been 1-goal games with 5 overtimes played between the three. All right. So I'm having a hard time banging on the Hurricanes when the Panthers have also found themselves not putting up big goals. Because let's go back to the Boston series. They won a game like 7-5 at one point. They were putting up goals against the Toronto Maple Leafs as well. It wasn't like Bobrovsky was shutting things down. I think he was basically letting in 1 or 2 goals a game. He's not letting anything in right now. And that's where we get back to Bobrovsky. Who started the Boston series, Joe? Who started the Boston series for the Florida Panthers?
Lyon. Yeah, their other goalie.
So it's not like Bobrovsky has been this outstanding world beater throughout the season. They were still the 8th seed at the end of the day. He was not this. So you hope, just like the Canes and their bunches, he'll also come back down to earth eventually. And I think it starts tonight. I don't see them getting swept. I just don't see them getting swept. And we've uncorked the bottle. So let's go. Let's get that reverse psychology thing going. I'm still drinking it, Joe. Let's go.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so we opened the bottle yesterday. Shout out to Ethan Hyman. Shout out to the News and Observer, making us look good up at the Raleigh Times. But we drank it yesterday, and the smell is awful. It's awful.
It really
Now,
has lost all
granted,
its
the
alcohol.
yeah, the taste itself, it really did taste like grape juice. Like I don't think there's any alcohol content to that at all.
Doubt it. Doubt it at this
But
point.
why are you going back to the well after we've
Well,
completed the task?
I just wanted to see if I let it breathe a little bit, if it opened up some stuff, maybe some tannins, a little bit better finish. Even though, as I've understood,
Okay.
muscadine is not something that you age. Apparently, it's something that you have to drink immediately.
It feels
It's
like an
not.
IPA, a session IPA. Did I get that
uh,
right?
Yeah, you did. Typically, IPAs, you want them fresh. You don't want them sitting around for a while. Otherwise,
Look
they
at me.
lose their flavor profiles. They do lose their flavor profiles.
Housekeeping.
And you mentioned the News and Observer and Ethan Hyman. We got some more stuff coming on down the line, thanks to Ethan. Poor Ethan has no idea what he signed up for now that he's got to work with you and me. You and me.
He's
The
used
two
to me.
Joes. I know. Now he's going to get used to me too, where I have my opinions on how things work. But one of the things that you and Ethan worked on recently is for the relaunch of your NC State podcast. It is called Law of the Wolf. And the teaser's out now. Just look up Law of the Wolf and NC State podcast for your new dose of Wolfpack therapy, Joe.
Yes, it will be therapeutic. It will be informative. It will be entertaining. And I'll have help again this year from Mike Glennon, Wolfpack great football player, quarterback during the football season, and then Scott Wood, the best three-point shooter in school history. We'll be back during the basketball season. Looking forward to. We will have weekly episodes just like we did last year, only this time under the new name of Law of the Wolf.
Very excited about that. Very excited about that. Also excited about our partnership with Breaking Tea. Shout out to Jamie and the crew over at Breaking Tea. We've got this T-shirt that we put together called "Bad for Ratings." The bad for ratings discourse won't go away, Joe. So we might as well lean in and have a little fun at the expense of traditional hockey folks. Snub your nose, just thumb your nose at them. Give them the finger. Get a "Bad for Ratings" T-shirt. You can get that at breakingtea.com/.
You get a hoodie too.
OG. Yeah, they got hoodies. I don't know if they got tank tops yet. I thought about breaking out the Whalers tank top today, but I did not do that for today. No, it's no big deal. I don't know. Maybe there would be a cease and desist sent to me for wearing a Whalers tank top on the show. Maybe YouTube, which, by the way, do you know how much money we've made on YouTube monetization so far?
No, I do not.
Since I turned it on. I turned it on this week. You know how much money we've made?
$2.
$7. No, $7.11.
Ooh, 7-Eleven. I like it. That feels
I
lucky.
think I want to say that's a cookout tray that we can get.
That feels
You want to
lucky,
split
though. I like it.
You want to split a yeah, fine. Put some money on it. I don't know. But you want to split a cookout tray with that?
Please.
Maybe we can't. Maybe we can't. And we can work out the dynamics with Whitaker and Hamer, attorneys and counselors of law. You can check them out at wh.lawyer for more information. Joe, it's basically I know they got multiple offices, including the G-Town, but they're all over the triangle, and they got various services for you.
Yeah, Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer have been together for 20 years. If you're starting a business, selling a business, you need family law, divorce, custody cases, real estate closings, or you're buying a house, check them out, wh.lawyer. Also, we're going to get you together because they have a podcast, the Outlaw Lawyer Podcast, that they do with your old colleague, the Mojo, Morgan Patrick.
Really?
I have to get you guys back together.
Oh, man.
Yes.
I love it. We'll have to do a show with Morgan. That'll be fun.
Yes.
That'll be fun.
So, yeah, check them out. Josh Whitaker, Joe Hamer. Like you said, all of the G's, Garner, Gastonia, Goldsboro, Clayton, Fuquay, Morehead City. Again, us getting down by the beach. Look at us. Whitaker and Hamer. It's wh.lawyer.
Speaking of the sports pig, if you want some pork product, you can go to the butcher's market. I once got a big old Boston butt because I was breaking out the cajachino, which is like the above ground way to make Cuban mojo style pork. And you can get whatever cut you need. You want the bone in, you want to take the fat off. I'm like, no, I need the fat on. Butcher's market's great because you can tell them specifically what you need in that cut of meat, and they will make it happen. That's why I'm a big fan of the butcher's market.
Yeah, Butcher's Market, they actually make their own sausage and bacon. That's how you know it's legit. 6 locations, Raleigh, Cary, Wake Forest, Holly Springs, and again, Wilmington. It's thebutchersmarkets.com. Go get yourself lunch there today because they have a great selection of sandwiches, hot sandwiches, cold sandwiches. They use Boar's Head Deli products. So you can go to the home base up there off of Six Forks, or
That's
come
my
back
spot.
to Holly Springs, which is where I'm essentially located. So
Next topic, please.
So the NBA Finals or the NBA playoffs are rolling on, Joe, and the Boston Celtics did the thing that you would expect the Boston Celtics to do against the Miami Heat. We're in gentleman's sweep territory between the Heat and the Celtics. I do feel like after the Celtics had their entire manhood question, when everybody pointed out that they quit in the middle of Game 3 and that Joe Mazzulla can't connect with the team, and I think Brian Windhorst has put it out, there's still some bad mojo and feelings about what happened with the Demi Udoka and everything else. They responded the way you would expect them to respond, trying to stave off elimination. I don't think this is going to be the turnaround for the series. Boston is who we thought they were. They struggled throughout the playoffs. They struggled to put away the Philadelphia 76ers. The Miami Heat have fed off of that. They put the hammer down, but I was not surprised that they responded in kind to avoid getting swept.
yeah, it's such a weird team. They've been the betting favorite all year for very good reasons. They should have won the title last year. They didn't close it out. In Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, they have two of the best two-way players in the NBA who work well together. Then the parts around them are really complementary. Marcus Smart, Al Horford. But the Celtics, for whatever reason this year, this is a Joe vibe check. This is a classic obvious vibe check. Why didn't it work? Well, you fired your coach because you had an inappropriate relationship caught on a ring cam before the season started. I don't know how else to explain this other than, well, Eric Spoelstra, also a really good coach who has his team believing in what they do. And I get the easy thing to do is bag on Mazzulla. I get that. But I would say, how about we give Mazzulla just this much credit for being thrown into the ocean like Artur's Urbe's puppy and being able to swim and get the team this far. But how about we just give Spoelstra this much credit, right? Because I feel like the Heat, they are the classic example of the land of forgotten toys. They got the Martin twins. They got somebody called Max Strus, who you would think would be playing for Juventus right now. I don't know.
That's it right there.
Who these guys are, but
you just hit on it right there.
Unbelievable job.
You just hit on it right there. I think it was David Thorpe of True Hoop had the headline of the newsletter that I got because I subscribe to the True Hoop newsletter along with Good Morning Basketball from Tom Ziller, all really, really good newsletters that you can subscribe to. Maybe we'll have a newsletter one of these days. But the headline of the newsletter yesterday was Heat culture is FU culture, essentially. And there's a little bit, you talk about vibe checks. I'm very, the thing that supersedes vibe checks and how things are going are you petty enough to drive you to success? Do you have that dog in you, as people like to say? And Eric Spoelstra has it because he's never really discussed as one of the great coaches, despite the fact that he consistently shows you that he can adjust, he can get through to players, he can get the most out of them. Jimmy Butler, I think, is fueled by this because I said this earlier in the week. Let's not forget the Miami Heat were one Jimmy Butler 3 away from beating the Celtics last year, and they would have been back in the finals. So I think that's kind of driven them, and the Heat have done, you talk about bracket luck, sometimes you got to do if the team is going to make the mistakes, you have to take advantage of them. If you're not going to adjust, then we're going to take advantage of it. And that's exactly what the Heat have done throughout the entire playoffs. Your miscues are going to be the things that fuel us, and we're going to go forward from there. Speaking of going forward, LeBron James has the NBA world talking because it sounds like he wants to retire, or at least he's contemplating retirement. Now, the reason why this seems to be hitting a little bit different, Joe, is because unlike other instances of him being knocked out of the playoffs and he's thinking about, I don't know what I'm going to do, it's always been related to where's he going to go? Would he opt out? Who does he want to bring in? Those types of things. This is the vibe that everybody is feeding off of, is that he doesn't know if he sounds like he wants to keep playing.
It's not fun to me to not be able to be a part of get to the finals. But we'll see what happens going forward. I don't know. got a lot to think about, to be honest. And, just for me personally, going forward with the game of basketball, got a lot to think about. Appreciate it.
So there you go. There's LeBron James on what he's contemplating going forward, Joe. I don't think he's actually going to retire, but I can't envision a scenario where he takes next year off because he's talked too much about playing with Bronny starting in 2024 when he's draft eligible. He's talked about that too much and being too important to him for him to just walk away from playing basketball because he got bounced by the Denver Nuggets.
I think it's really hard for LeBron James. He competes at a different level than any athlete we've ever seen before in this sense. And he has said this. He said this like 10 years ago. He doesn't compete against everyone else. He competes against Jordan and Jordan's legacy. And he takes that very personally. No pun intended there. And when he loses, when his team is eliminated, it really is this crushing sense of failure to him, even though most people would look at it and go, you just had a team that really kind of came together, played unbelievable basketball for 2 months. You did well, to make the tournament itself, and then let alone knock out Golden State, knock out Memphis, and you lost to a better team. It happens. But I think it's just such a crushing feeling for him. Also, now you factor in that he's 38 years old, and you realize, as we said at the beginning of these playoffs, anybody can win when you look at it. And that's playing out right now, that Denver and Miami are going to be in the final, right? Like, that's kind of amazing. And Lavelle Moten had put something on, it was either Facebook or Twitter, about Bill Russell. You know, one of the criticisms of Bill Russell is that there were only 8 teams in the NBA when he was winning his titles, which you can take both ways, right? Like, oh, there were only 8 teams. Well, yeah, but the other 7 teams were also pretty good. Those rosters were fairly stacked if you think about it. And one of the comments to it was, well, there are only 8 teams or 4 or 5 teams in the NBA now who can win anyway. And I thought to myself, sure, you could have that attitude in most other years, but not this year. And I think when you're LeBron and you are so hyper-focused on the one ultimate goal, and that really truly is winning titles and being compared to Michael Jordan and putting yourself in the conversation to be the greatest of all time, you have a season like this, you have a bracket like this that you look at and you go, we could win this thing. We can win this thing. And you have those sugar plum fairies dancing in your head when you get to that round. But no matter what coach you talk to, Joe, no matter what player you ever talk to, they will always tell you the same thing. The game before the game, the round before the round is the most difficult to win. And in this case, you saw it with the Lakers. They poured it out in 2 of those games they felt like they had. And when you don't get them, that's a broken team. They were a broken team in the sense that they tried so, not unlike the Canes, losing the way that they did in 3 of those 4 games. So I do not expect LeBron to retire, but remember, Jordan retired twice. So maybe this is one way he could compete with him. He would
Dude, I'm not right. I was getting, you just said, I am not ready.
Play with his son.
Man, I am not ready for the discourse for LeBron James retiring only to come back in the same way that Michael Jordan came back twice. He's already done Space Jam, the sequel, and we've already had Skip Bayless be like, this is why you're never going to catch Jordan, because his Space Jam was better than your Space Jam and everything else. But to your point, LeBron James, his legacy is already etched in NBA history, right? I mean, he's the NBA's all-time leading scorer. He's played in 12 conference finals, for heaven's sake. He's been to the finals 10 times. All right. There was a streak. What was it? 8 in a row where he went to the finals? 8 in a row. You know, and I know StatMuse had put this out where everybody talks about Jordan and his championships. You know who's been swept out of the first round twice and who hasn't? Jordan. Jordan got swept out of the first round twice. LeBron, that never happened with LeBron James. So there's a consistency there. But there's also the financials of it and how competitive can the Lakers be over the next couple of years with what they've got tied up? How do they remake that roster? Right now, LeBron James, where I had the numbers up here, and this is something to consider going forward. So he's got a contract extension that's going to pay him $46.9 million next season and has a $50.7 million player option for 2024-25, meaning that he can become an unrestricted free agent in 2024, right? Which will also what happens in 2024, Joe? What happens in 2024? Bronny's ready to go. So if you're the Hornets, what do? You draft Bronny James. If you're the Golden State Warriors, what do? You draft Bronny James. You basically dare Jordan or you dare LeBron. Hey, you said you want to play with your son. Well, here he is. Let's make this happen. And LeBron James comes to your town. Can you not envision this? I can envision this. Are you ready for this?
The ultimate petty. I like it.
We're moving on.
All right, shout out to new Network for Entrepreneurs in Wilmington. We talked to Jim, what was it, last week, about what they do. If you missed that conversation, you can check it out in our previous podcast. You can watch it on YouTube as well. But new, again, Network for Entrepreneurs in Wilmington. You can check them out online at newilm.com. It's connecting, it's networking, it's understanding that Wilmington, that area of North Carolina, is just as active as the Triangle when it comes to startups, great businesses, and just making sure that things are conducive to success.
Yeah, New was named the #1 startup ecosystem in the country for cities with fewer than 300,000 people. Again, you can find Jim Roberts on LinkedIn or Facebook. New, where the river of innovation meets an ocean of possibilities.
Speaking of innovations, you know what's one of the most innovative things I've ever seen? A crowler. Have you seen the crowler machine? Breeze Through has a crowler machine outside PNC Arena at their location. What is it? Trinity and Edwards Mill. So
1200 Edwards Mill.
There's gonna be a game 5. It's gonna be here Friday. And if you're gonna be tailgating, I know the weather might be a little iffy. Put some rain gear on. Get yourself a crowler, 12-pack or whatever you need at that Breeze Through across from PNC Arena. They got all sorts of other goodies too, Joe.
Are you saying that with a C? Is it a can growler? Is that what you're saying?
Crowler. Yeah, it's a can. There's a growler, which is a big bottle. And then there's the crowler, which is the can growler. It's usually 32 ounces. 32 ounces of suds. The good stuff.
Listen,
the good stuff.
I know Breeze Through has great beer. They have great drinks. They have great coffee. Because we got 8 o'clock starts. If you miss anything for your tailgates needs, go check them out. Breeze Through Markets. Locally owned neighborhood store. It's 1200 Edwards Mill right there across from the arena. Get your Gatorade, get your coffee, get your beer, get your ice, get on your way.
All right, joining us now on the Heister Automotive Group hotline, she is Sara Civian, Bleacher Report, 2 Minute Men podcast. We haven't talked to Civ in a while. Sarah, it's good to see you. We actually can see you through the magic of StreamYard technology. It's great, isn't it?
Well, now I can.
On to bigger and better things, you guys. I love it. Nice to see you too.
As we're drinking I'm drinking the 10 wine.
Oh no.
Well, look, Sarah.
So bad.
The Canes haven't won. The Canes haven't won an Eastern Conference Finals game in a long time. All right. So we have to, and it hasn't happened since this bottle was made in 07.
Good juju.
You know what? We're going to crack it open, and I'm giving myself a headache just drinking it right now, but it doesn't matter. I'm doing it for the team, Sarah. Let's go.
You're dedicated to the cause, and we love you for that.
Speaking of the cause, you wrote about this. Was it the previous? No, it was ahead of this series. The Carolina Hurricanes seem to create this cause from traditional media that, this is terrible. The ratings. I don't believe these people. I don't believe them. I think you wrote about this. If you like hockey, why wouldn't you want to watch this matchup? Why wouldn't you be taking in Florida and Carolina? Because while the scoring hasn't been off the charts, the games have been tense. It's been a hell of a lot of fun to watch, even if the Canes are down 0-3.
Yeah, I mean, do you want the blowouts with New Jersey and Carolina again? No, I'll take this type of hockey any day, even if you got Kotkaniemi reacting like he did, because these games are so close and so good to watch. I mean, I do think they cause this fuss, and then the fans get a little defensive, and it creates this weird environment where people don't really want to root for the team because they're like, oh my God, these fans are so defensive. But it's because they're defending something that a lot of people don't truly understand.
But aren't all fans defensive? All fans, like, all you got to do is go online and you will find extremely online people being terrible about their teams. It's not a new phenomenon for the Canes.
Yes and no. I mean, as somebody from Boston and who's been around Bruins fans, I think Boston people will be the first to make fun of themselves, but they're also very intense and in your face and mean. Where Hurricanes fans are nice and they expect that niceness out of other people. And then when they don't get it, they're like, how is this not working? But I don't know. I take that niceness every time.
Sara Civian joining us on the Heister Automotive Group hotline. Sarah, you know a lot about the Canes and what they've gone through in the last 5 years. I'm curious. I had an existential question for Joe before Game 3, and that is: are the Canes top players, Sebastian Aho, Andrei Svechnikov? Let's throw Turbo in there too. Are they good enough? Are their top players good enough for the Canes to win the Stanley Cup?
It's a yes and situation. Yes, I don't want to say no, they are not good enough. Like the yes, and they need one more sniper. They have always needed one more sniper. Pacioretty was going to be the guy. They didn't really have an excuse. I will say they didn't have an excuse to do nothing at the deadline, but at the same time, the teams that didn't really go far. But that's also in a vacuum because those teams didn't really need that sniper necessarily. And the Hurricanes have had this one clear need. And then 2.5, I'm going to say, of their best 3 or 4 players went down. And it's just kind of like, what do you expect from them? I think under those circumstances, it's great they even made it to the ECF and they're having these close games. And I also think it's just the way their team in front office works that they're not going to take these big risks, but they are going to be in contention for a while and tweak little things and hope that it pays off. It's like that's a risk in itself, even as other GMs might go for something at the deadline and that doesn't work out. The risk the Hurricanes take is not doing that.
Do you
Sara
know how mad
Civian,
I am that we were denied a Max Pacioretty final where Vegas gave away one of their players for nothing playing against him in the finals? Like, I am so mad that we're not getting that.
They would have got Vegas for once in their life, and it looks like that's not happening, and they're Vegasing everybody else. So that does stink.
Sara Civian, Bleacher Report, joining us here. That's Gilio Ovias, and she's on the Heister Automotive Group hotline. So I agree with your yes, and it's a much more layered conversation because I don't like the retconning of the trade deadline. I was one that was adamant about going out there and utilizing their $10 million in cap space. And in retrospect, if the goal is to find yourself here more consistently than not, if your goal is to win the division and put yourself in the best possible chance to get to the Stanley Cup, I don't see how their moves didn't pay off. We're talking about not having these guys, but they did make moves to secure one for the long term in Andrei Svechnikov. And then they made that's where they make their moves in the offseason, as you mentioned, with Max Pacioretty or Brent Burns, that has clearly paid off, but he's not available. Now, in a way, I do feel that Andrei Svechnikov and his injury tables the discussion as to whether or not he is capable of being that guy, right? We saw Nate just get these questions last year. He produced in the regular season, but he's been a little bit quiet this year. Sebastian Aho started off hot, but he's been a little bit quiet in the series. We still don't know what Andrei Svechnikov is capable of, and I got to imagine that the Canes truly believe he can be that guy. So they're not going to make any crazy moves because they feel like, well, if we just had him, then maybe that would be the difference maker.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of stinks in that way that we play it feels like there's always that one thing. Like last year, it was Freddie not being available. This year, it's Svechnikov not being available. And they do have the depth to withstand. And they are at the Eastern Conference Final. Like there are only 4 teams left.
Right.
So I will say then luck plays in for sure. And you're seeing luck on some of these bounces. You're seeing Bobrovsky. What are you going to do sometimes? There's so many things. I don't know. I've just seen so much discourse about this and people are getting mad that people are talking about the trade deadline or people are talking about the Stars aren't being good enough because you just look at Sergei Bobrovsky having this Conn Smythe caliber playoff run and you ask yourself, is there anything they could do? But yeah, a team that wins the cup is going to have to face these good goalies and have the scoring talent to withstand that. And the Hurricanes just don't have that right now. I do think Svechnikov would obviously help that, especially when it's been 2 or 3 goals that could completely change the complexion of the series.
And sometimes I guess that's the maddening part about sports. You can't predict these things. And hockey, out of all the sports, is one of the most fickle, right? Because you go back to the start of the playoffs and the Florida Panthers versus the Boston Bruins. And I asked you this question earlier. Who started that series in net for the Florida Panthers?
Alex Lyon.
Right. I mean, not Bobrovsky.
Throwback.
If Bobrovsky was this guy, you think Paul Maurice, if he knew that, was going to start lying? No. He wasn't great. But there was a belief in keeping with Bobrovsky, or at least that he's going to give us a better chance than Lyon. And obviously that's paid off with this all-time heater, which all this is to say is that just like the Carolina Hurricanes, scoring can come in bunches and you can go through a drought, a goalie can revert back to the mean pretty quick if you just keep peppering him with shots, right?
100%. And you've seen this in this playoff run with most teams that it's been kind of unique that they haven't had this elite, like the Panthers are the only team that have had this elite goaltending through this playoff run. So I think that might be, while it's true that the hot goaltender can take you far, as you're seeing with the Panthers, it's also true that there are other aspects now. So I will say I've never fully subscribed to you absolutely need an elite goaltender to win the playoffs. It doesn't hurt, but I think the Hurricanes do really well with that, and they've kind of gotten on that train early where they need just an above average goaltender and then this elite defense.
Sarah, you follow the NHL a lot closer than Joe and I do. We follow the Canes, right? But you actually have an understanding of the league. At the time when Florida trades Huberdeau for Tkachuk, what was the response around the league? I think we know what it is now, but at the time, how was that move interpreted?
I mean, it was, whoa, what the heck is everybody doing? Like, there's finally a big trade going on in the NHL. I think there was a lot of expectations that were not met by Huberdeau. I think they were just happy to get something for Tkachuk if you're the Flames, but at the same time, that did not work out for them. And when you are the Panthers, a lot of more like GMs just need to keep it simple, right? Trade for one of the best players in the league, and he's going to put up 100+ points and give you this fantastic playoff run. I think going for something like this, you've got to give Bill Zito some credit.
Sara Civian joining us here on the Heister Automotive Group Hotline. Carolina Hurricanes trying to stave off elimination tonight against the Florida Panthers. I think they're going to be able to pull that off. Oh, I want to close on this, Sarah. I want to go back to how we started this conversation, what you wrote about in terms of the Canes, this market, and because you came into this area cold, right? Like, what did you know? What did you know about the Canes before you joined the Athletic and you were assigned to cover the Canes?
Honestly, not that much. I hadn't even been to Raleigh. My brother used to work for the Wolfpack for like a few months, and I almost visited him, decided not to. And then they were like, "You want to come cover this new and exciting team?" I think Tom Dundon called me and he's like, "Rod Brind'Amour is the guy. Trust me." And I'm like, "Okay." I liked watching him growing up. Maybe he'll bring something back here. The way he was so confident, and the way, I mean, a former NHL GM who doesn't work in the league anymore that I know from a family friend called me and was like, "Just wait till this team makes the playoffs. It's the loudest house in the league." And I'm like, "Okay, that's awesome." Cool. I didn't expect them to do it that quickly. And just the way you could tell, even though I came in cold and all of these changes had already happened, you could tell just being around, it felt new and it felt like something exciting was on the verge. And Rod and Justin Williams kept talking about this idea of relevancy. I was like, they just seem to really get it. And look where we are now.
So what was the biggest takeaway when you were here then and when you left?
I think the misunderstanding around the league of kind of who these fans and who these people in this system are, because something that makes it so special is how much everybody has to care to keep things running. So these fans, maybe it's not as many fans in volume as a place like Boston or Montreal, but the fans that have been here since the drought are some of the most diehard fans you'll ever see in your life. And there's passion here and like a fun playfulness that kind of gives you hope about what sports should be.
So there was a tweet from John Chase, who used to work for the Carolina Hurricanes when all this stuff was going on. John's good people, and I'm not necessarily trying to pick on him. I'm just saying I'm using this tweet as a springboard to my point, because there's this conversation about traditional markets. You know, obviously Boston would be considered a traditional hockey market, right? For whatever that's worth. But you know, now that you cover the league in its entirety, how many of those quote unquote traditional markets actually exist? I mean, is Dallas a traditional market? Is Las Vegas a traditional market? It just, what exactly does that mean? Not everything's one of the original six. There's more of them than there are of that. And I find it kind of weird that we're obsessed with this idea of, well, the Canes have been around for 25 years. You've got a generation and a half or two that has come up being a fan of this, and there's a cup and everything else. So why can't it be considered traditional? My point would be, why do you want it to be traditional? It's not fun.
It's such a funny juxtaposition of this sport that you don't really see in other sports to this degree with the gatekeeping. And I think it's a lot about hockey culture and the white old men's club where it's like they don't want the league to grow. They say grow the game, and then they just are like, no, I want my little 6 teams. I want people who actually get hockey, whatever that means. It's just something so insane to see, and you see it with that Andrew Raycroft tweet, who was the goalie of the Bruins and now works at Nesson covering the Bruins. He just said something about the ratings are going to be horrible, and the ratings are not horrible. They're some of the best ratings we've ever seen for the playoffs. So it's just like, first of all, and then they're talking about escrow and things and the cap salary raising. It's embarrassing if the cap salary raising by like $1 million is hinging on if the Bruins and the Maple Leafs make the cup final or whatever every single year. It's like, what? It's just not even true. Like some of the returns of like a ticket that, let's say a Toronto Maple Leafs ticket's going to be $800 and a Panthers one's going to be $400. You're still going to get more fans and who are going to buy more merch. Like there's new returning fans. There's like new capacity for fans of the Panthers. So they're going to be returning and over time spending more money, and there's just going to be more people who are fans that make the league more popular. I don't know why this is so hard.
I don't know why it's so hard to contemplate either. I mean, more 18,000 people a night at PNC Arena is way more important for the health of the league than a half a share of ratings point on the national broadcast. In terms of ratings, you made an excellent point. The ratings are pretty good. Last time I checked the stadium series, but everybody was like, it's a college football stadium. This looks really, really, it doesn't look like the other stadium. Who cares about Raleigh? It was one of the highest rated stadium series games out there. So clearly there's a market for this stuff. And you mentioned the gatekeeping. And I can't think of somebody who would know more about gatekeeping than you, given that you're a woman covering hockey. And I would imagine that there are a lot of people who would point out to you, what are you talking about? So you wouldn't know anything about gatekeeping, right?
No, I wouldn't know the first thing. Not me hopping around the league.
Not that you experienced any gatekeeping when you came here, Sarah. Like, who is there? Why is she tweeting like this? What is going on here? Why do fans like her? Gee, I wonder why, guys.
I get literally physically gate kept out of the arenas. They're like, who do you know here? I'm like, I work in this league. They're like, can you call the PR? I'm like calling Sonny, like, hello, I'm once again locked out of the LA Kings arena. Physically, mentally, spiritually.
Yes. Sarah, we appreciate it. Good catching up with you, and we'll talk to you later.
Of course. Thanks so much.
That's Sara Civian here on the Ovias and Giglio podcast experience. I still have to come up with a catchy name. Can we still call it OG? Can we still call it that?
They're letters of the alphabet.
Yeah, they are letters of the alphabet. It's like, I just want to keep joining us on the OG. I guess we could still call it that. I mean, we still have O and G on all the logos and everything else. We just made it look a little bit different in the grand scheme of things. So no, big fun talking to Sara Civian. Always enjoy our conversations with her.
What's up next? What's up next?
So the weather is kind of cool right now. I know the weather this weekend is going to be meh for Memorial Day, so it's going to take people out of grilling and all that other stuff. But that's not going to deter you for the rest of the summer. And don't let mosquitoes deter you from enjoying that as well, Joe. So hit up the Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority. I use Mosquito Authority. They come out, I think it's monthly, where they come out, they use the spray. It's completely safe, and it keeps the mosquitoes at bay. I mean, I got some other things that help me out too, but ultimately it really does a good job. I don't want to know what it would be like if I didn't use it. Let's just put it that way, because I've actually, I can say that I have, because before I started using Mosquito Authority, you'd walk out in 2 seconds, you were swarmed with mosquitoes. So you don't want that. You don't want that this summer.
Yeah, go to bugsbite.com. Check them out. They're here in the Triangle, Sand Hills area. Get your ants, termites, moisture under your house, you name it. I had mice in my attic. When I tell you I've had the full experience with Mosquito Authority and Pest Authority, I am telling you that I've had the full experience. I had moisture under my house. I had mice in my attic. They got rid of those as well. So again, check them out at bugsbite.com. They're on Twitter as well, No Mosquito NC, or call them the old-fashioned way, 919-807-1951. That's 919-807-1951. Big thanks to our friends at the Mosquito Authority, Pest Authority.
Later today, you and I are going to go to Oak City Sports Cards, where you can buy, sell, and trade. So what are you dragging me into? What are we doing at Oak City
All right,
today?
so just so you know, right now, these cards are going to be mine, not yours.
It's
We are
okay.
not
Don't worry.
50-50 on this.
Unless, wait, here's my question. Do they grade video games? Like if I take in an old Mario, will they grade
Hey.
that for me? That's what I would be interested in.
Listen, Weston is a guy who knows a guy. He is that guy. Okay, so I wouldn't put anything past Weston. That's number one. No, we're gonna go buy a hobby box today of Bowman Inception U cards, which include the French Mamba, Victor Wembanyama, and also Caitlin Clark from Iowa. So when you buy a hobby box, you're guaranteed to get at least one autograph in the set. So we have our fingers crossed for the French Mamba, of course, but get your cards. You can buy cards, sell cards, get them graded. It's important to get your cards graded to get their true value. Weston can help you do that. It's oakcitycards.com. They're in downtown Raleigh. Can't wait to go see them later today.
Let's go ahead and get to some Hey Joe questions brought to you by Oakwood Pizza Box. I was actually over at Oakwood Pizza Box this past weekend. Just did a normal, just a traditional pizza, not the square this time.
Oh my.
Meatball and mushroom. That's my go-to. Ooh. Although the one that Anthony's cooked up with the pepperoni and the jalapeno and the honey.
Yeah, the special jalapeno pepperoni honey actually is his fastball. If you tell them you know us, he'll probably put it on a square for you. But he usually only does it on a circle.
Fair enough. All right, let's get to some of these Hey Joe questions. We got one from Bain. I'm off tomorrow watching the game tonight, Canes and Panthers. Should I go ahead and start with the very old Barton 86 proof and slowly increase the proof throughout the game and end as the draw and as the end draws near, or just go full blown Elijah Craig barrel strength 128 and black out the night? Look, if you're not working tomorrow, then I highly recommend you just go ahead and go 128 proof. That's where it's at. We have to work tomorrow. We have a show tomorrow. So I'm not going to go too hard in the paint on the bourbon tonight, especially as I continue to drink. I have a headache, dude, with the...
what are you doing? I have no idea what you're doing.
I legitimately have a headache. And look, this is not a knock to Duplin, all right? This is not about Duplin. This wine is clearly not intended to be aged for 15 years. I'm just saying we did it for a bit. But
there are certain losses that are brown liquor losses. And I've even made this point to coaches. After St. Louis, I said to Mark Godfrey, that was a brown liquor loss. Go get yourself a brown liquor. After 2021, getting kicked out of the College World Series, I said I actually bought Elliott Avent some brown liquor. Went to the office, bought everybody over there some liquor. There are certain losses that are brown liquor losses. I actually thought game one of this series was a brown liquor loss. So you're a couple of games late. I actually think tonight you're not going to need the brown liquor. So I'd save those for special occasions. Boston College football this year was a brown liquor loss. Today, you're good, man.
Boston College football.
God, that gross.
Yeah, no, now you're
you see the standard now? You see where I see
getting? No, that's honestly, that's all you had to say. I'm like, oh yeah, that would definitely be one that you want to have some brown liquor for. From Ryan, hey Joe, do the Canes need to muck it up more in this series? Power play surprisingly looked not abysmal. The penalty kill has been excellent. It has not typically Rod Brindamore style, but we need to do something to get in Bob's head. I mean, honestly, I thought after Game 3, they tried to get into his head by just doing more, creating more. Bob's just on one right now, man, and I'm not sure what you can do. You're right. It's the Canes' physicality is present. They're just not the type of team that's doing what Florida does, or what the Devils wanted to do, or what the Islanders were doing. All that extra stuff. I will be curious if the Canes will try to push that with officiating, because I think most of us understood that in Monday night's loss, while officiating was not the reason why they lost, the reason why they lost was because they couldn't get anything past Bob. They hit the post a bunch of times. There were some curious calls that put the Panthers on the penalty on the power play. Canes were only able to do that once.
Yeah, I don't think they need to change who they are. Again, this gets back to Rod's comments about liking the way that they're playing. The only thing they need to change is just a little bit of puck luck that they need. And
Yeah.
it's hard to change that because it's like you can't control it. It's like saying you're going to control the weather on your wedding day. You have no control over that.
Let's go to Kinchin. We haven't heard from Kinchin in a while. Is Miami the new Boston when it comes to being a sports town? Yeah, you've got 2 8 seeds with the Miami Heat and the Florida Panthers that are on the verge of getting to their respective finals. I think it was Dan Wetzel. You had sent this to me, Joe, from Dan Wetzel, who I love over at Yahoo Sports. And growing up in South Florida, it is a football town, straight up. Shout out to Pat, our old colleague, who had tweeted out that he was overhearing a fan conversation in Sunrise ahead of this playoff game, and they were talking about the Dolphins offseason. Again, it's all Dolphins all the time, having listened to copious amounts of sports talk. The Dolphins are the thing that drive most of the conversation to South Florida. The Miami Heat are something fun to do. It's the party. It's the bandwagon. And the Florida Panthers occupy a really, really weird space. And it's interesting that the two teams that are essentially part-time things for Miami sports fans or Florida sports fans are the ones that have been excellent.
I was going to say, I'm going to defer to you on whether we consider the Florida Panthers to be a Miami-based team. This feels like the New Jersey Devils to me. The New Jersey Devils play right across the river in the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, but no one in New York is like, oh, yeah, those are our Devils. Now, those same people talk out of the other side of their mouth when it comes to the Giants and Jets because, well, they play across the river. So I can see the argument both ways here. I do think of, and you'll have to help me here, I feel like Fort Lauderdale is not Miami. Like it's its own thing, right?
No, it's its own thing. Look, I grew up, as most people know who've been listening to the radio in some shape or form for the past 20 years. You understand that I grew up in Boca Raton and moved here in 1995 between my sophomore year and junior year. My dad is a huge Miami fan he's just a huge sports fan in general. But he's Dolphins, he's he's Dolphins, he's Hurricanes. I remember when it's been 35 years since the inaugural season for the Miami Heat. I remember my dad taking me to those games in Overtown at the old Miami Arena so I could go see Shaq. I could go see Jordan. The Miami Heat were just kind of a thing that, I mean, people kind of paid attention to it, but it really was just something fun to do. And then the bandwagon comes out when they're actually good. When they had their 4 years of LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh, you couldn't find a hotter sports town because it was to be seen. The Heat are the party to be seen. It's not a life you live. You live a Dolphins fan life in South Florida. You don't live the Heat. The Heat are just party time. You want to be seen. The celebrities are going to be there. You go to Prime 112 after. I mean, I'm sure there's new restaurants and clubs that people go to. My cousin used to work at Prime 112. Now he's over at the Fountain Blue. That's where a lot of NBA guys go after the fact, where you see some partying and whatnot.
Club live, baby.
Club live, baby. Get that tenant rate, baby. So the Panthers, man, I don't know, man. Like Boca Raton was about a 45-minute drive from Miami. All right. It would be the equivalent now of us going from Raleigh to Durham. Okay. Like, it takes you anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, depending on traffic, to get from one place to the other down 95. What's weird about the triangle is that while Raleigh and Durham have their own distinct scenes, it's not crazy for you to think, oh, I'm going to go to Durham tonight, or I'm going to go to Chapel Hill tonight. There's this restaurant I want to check out. Fine. Let's just make a night of it and go. You don't do that in South Florida. You don't leave your bubble in South Florida. Because the traffic sucks, like shout out to Shannon Penn, our former producer who now works at ESPN Radio and is flourishing. Like he lives in Miramar. And I joked, when they first put him up in Miami, I'm like, oh, don't get spoiled. You're going to get spoiled living in Miami because everything's around you. And he finds a place to live out in Miramar. I remember texting him. I'm like, dude, hope you enjoy traffic for about 90 minutes, even though technically it should be like a 30-minute drive down the highway. And it's brutal. So there's no reason to leave your bubble. If you live in Boca, you're sticking around Boca. You're not going to Miami all willy-nilly. My family, I don't know how your family is. Kelly's family is a lot like this. We were the family that would go visit. They never visited us. Like if my cousins came to Boca, it was a special freaking occasion. But me going down to Miami, going to Coral Gables, it was no big deal. So I don't know if it's like the same thing with the Giglio clan, where nobody comes down from Jersey to see you, but everybody goes back up to Jersey to go visit family.
We had Thanksgiving every year, but all of
Okay,
that
yeah.
was my mom's side of the family. They all lived about an hour from us, 45 minutes, an hour from us. So that was the
Yeah.
thing.
And I mean, look, I learned this in New York too. You go up to New York, you're like, I'm not going across the river. Like, who would do
No.
that? Nobody
No.
does that. So yes, to your point, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, not the same damn thing. All right, let's go to Nick. Hopscotch will not be selling single-day passes this year. How do you feel about this? Was really conflicted about Notre Dame, NC State, or Japanese breakfast, but I think they made the decision for me. I'm assuming you're going to go to the NC State Notre Dame game. Are you familiar with Hopscotch, Joe?
I am. Remember, I worked downtown for a long time, so
And we will be
back
working
downtown too. So I'm
downtown
excited about
soon.
that.
hopefully here soon. Yeah, look, man. I mean, these festivals are not cheap to run. I mean, I know the guys who started up Hopscotch, and I know the guys who help book Hopscotch now. Good dudes. These events are not easy to run. They're not cheap. So my guess is they're trying to recoup costs best they can, and that's where, because I used to take advantage of the single day. Like if there was a Plaza show that I was really interested in seeing, like I went to go see Spoon and St. Vincent not that long, years ago. And that was just a single day ticket for me. I think when the Roots played, I did the same thing too. So it does suck because there is a Plaza show that I have to pull it up because I don't have it in front of me. But there is a Plaza show that I would absolutely go see. I think Always is playing that night. But yeah, if I have to buy the whole thing, I don't know. A little dicey on that one.
So they're not going to do the tried and true trick of trying to sell as many whole package deals as possible, and then like the week before,
maybe
do individual day tickets.
Yeah, maybe at the end, maybe they'll
That
unveil
feels
some
like a thing people do.
Yeah, that might just be a tier that they end up breaking out later on down the line. We'll see. This is from Scott. Look who's lurking over Giglio's shoulder in our video where we're drinking the wine. Hey, look at that. It's Rand. Look at Rand. We needed Rand to block the lighting coming in from the top of the Raleigh Times top bar.
We did. On our way out today, hit me with our theme song, will you?
Oh yeah, no, we'll do the theme song. Do I have it loaded up? I do have it loaded up, so we should be able to go with that. All right, next up on Hey Joe, we've got David. Hello, Joe. Where's the best Cuban sandwich in Raleigh, Durham? Well, David, you can't find a Cuban sandwich at the airport. It doesn't exist. I'm kidding. A lot of folks, I get this question a lot. Like, where do you find a good Cuban sandwich? I haven't really found one around here.
This is about the bread, right?
It's about the bread. It's about the marinated pork, the pulled pork that goes along with it. I feel like most sandwiches around here are Cuban-inspired sandwiches, not truly Cuban sandwiches. And yes, the bread does matter. I know Carmen's over by the airport has been doing it for a really, really long time. I think Copa out in Durham has a Cuban sandwich that I've heard is pretty good. I don't think I've had it yet. I think it was called something else the last time I was there. But my knowledge of new restaurants and how things have changed over has kind of diminished in my old age, and I'm not getting out as much as I used to. But
now, do your parents make a good Cuban sandwich, or is it strictly just about the bread?
My parents don't make a Cuban sandwich. My parents will go to Miami to go visit family, and they'll bring back a prepared Cuban sandwich that all I have to do is throw on the grill to planch it. Get the butter on top, grill it up, get a nice little crust. You gotta get the Swiss. You get the Swiss cheese like nice and crusty too. That also helps. Low key. I'm gonna give you a pro tip if you want to make a Cuban sandwich at home. Low key. Go to Jimmy John's and get the day old French bread. All right. Like they usually have the French bread available for you for like 50 cents if you just want to buy the bread. Buy that and then use it that day. But you got to butter it up and all that stuff. Same thing. And it actually is a pretty good approximation of Cuban style bread. It's not the same bread. We got Publix now, and you can get real Cuban bread at Publix. But if you don't have a Publix near you, but you got a Jimmy John's near you, ask for the day old bread, and you might actually get something pretty good. Speaking of Cuban stuff, Tom, I can finally eat chips. You want to try these, Joe? Cuban sandwich flavored with natural flavors, Cuban sandwich chips.
I'm okay with that.
I'm gonna have to go.
Speaking of trying things, what are we doing for 4,000 subscribers?
Luke DeCock, News and Observer columnist, has a bottle of Brass Monkey, that funky monkey.
Oh,
An
God.
actual bottle of Brass Monkey, not the malt liquor version, but like the one that actually has the juice and the alcohol in it.
Oh, no.
Over ice. When we get to 4,000, you ready for that?
Have you ever been hungover just thinking about drinking something before?
I'm actually getting, I feel like I'm hungover just drinking this wine right now. All right, last Hey Joe question from Cole. Save this for tomorrow, sir. Today. Why the hell is NC State going to start Brennan Armstrong and Jordan Houston? That's 6 wins at best. You start MJ Morris and Michael Allen, and that's 8 to 9 wins. This shit is stupid, and I know what's going to happen. Don't be surprised. All right, Joe. We have two competing football discourses right now. We've got what's NC State going to do with their quarterback situation? Brennan Armstrong, MJ Morris. And then I just tweeted this out recently because we're 100 days from the start of the college football season. And Drake May was on the graphic that ESPN had put out. And I had simply said, yes, I am really looking forward to another preseason of measured and nuanced discussion about Tar Heel football and hype. Really looking forward to that. So to me, the North Carolina part of this is really easy to understand. They got Drake May. All right. This is a guy that the NFL draft gurus are going to salivate over all season long. All right. So, of course, they're going to be in the mix for preseason hype because they got a quarterback you want to watch. NC State, I think we referenced this at the end of last year. We referenced this with Brennan Armstrong coming to NC State. This is a reset year for the Wolfpack. I don't think anybody is thinking otherwise, right? Am I missing something here? I think most people understand that last year was the year built for a breakthrough. They came up short, but still had a successful year, relatively speaking. But this year was going to be a reset because all those guys weren't coming back, right down to Devin Leary. Am I missing something here?
Yeah. I get the question, meaning do you just go to the young guys and then in hope in 2026, that group is in position like last year's to have this, maybe they win the conference. There you go. Yeah. I get that premise. I don't think college sports is that way anymore, though. And part of me laments that. And part of me says, if I'm Dave Doran, I go and get a 60-year quarterback who knows the system. I stay with Jordan Houston, a 60-year play. Now, of course, all running backs are going to play. We know this at this point, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Somebody's getting hurt. They're all playing. I know they just lost Demi Sumo, but again, playing time is always going to be the number one reason people leave, in my opinion, always. So I think State is in a position, where their win total this year is set at 6.5.
You guess what? Over on that? Yeah, I'm going to take
in a down year. In a down year, 6-6 would be Dave Doran's worst year. So, I think they did what they needed to do for them to be at that 6-7 win level for this year. That's what I think they needed to do. I think that's their thought process. I get the old thought process of, okay, let's go to the young guys. Let's start building. The thing about that now is there's no guarantee if you go MJ and Allen this year that they're going to be here next year. Because if they fall out, guess what? Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, all of the NIL schools are going to come and get them. So
I'm glad you brought that up.
It's just really hard. I will say this about Carolina, because I've told you before, the number one thing I look at as a top 25 voter in the preseason top 25. Who's your quarterback? What's your schedule? Now, I think Carolina has those two things going for them. The third thing I look at is offensive line.
Not if you ask Mac Brown, the end of the season, Mac Brown's not happy with that end of the season schedule, Joe, with Clemson, Duke, and State. So
I do like this, though, for Carolina, not just Drake May. They went into the portal and got 2 receivers who I think are going to help them and be difference makers and be hammers for them. I think that was really smart because NC State didn't do that last year with Devin Leary. And I think Carolina put themselves in the best position to have success by going into the portal and adding the receivers that they did.
I'm glad you brought up how college football is today. And we'll close Hey Joe on this point. Because that was Dave Doran's entire MO. And the reason why I argued for State fans to chill on Dave Doran. Because the pattern was there. You didn't want to go through another coach 5 years, not build towards something. It comes in cycles. And Dave Doran's had a couple cracks at it with the cycles. he's come up short. They haven't won the division. It's a fair criticism to say that in these cycles with the talent, what you've had, that you haven't been able to push through. I think it's completely valid, but they've had really good, consistent seasons. You know when the windows are there for them. And I think 98% of college football programs have forgotten that 8, 9 wins, sometimes 10. That's pretty good for 98% of college football out there. But because of the transfer portal, you don't have those opportunities to build over a 3-year period of time. Last year was a really unique season for the Wolfpack and Dave Doran, and it's the last time you're ever going to get that for Dave Doran and NC State. Everything has been compacted. Now, they clearly understand that because you look at their offensive coordinator move, you look at who they got in the transfer portal of Brennan Armstrong, and they're trying to make the most out of what they can this season. But yes, on the flip side of that, it does make you wonder if you've got some talent in MJ Morris, why not develop that? But there's also the possibility he can still redshirt, right? Because they have, he doesn't have that COVID year. He's actually part of that new class that is back to normalcy. And that's maybe something to consider.
Yep.
Maybe that's something to consider. All right, we'll close on this. We got a follow-up on Roy Williams and that polo that we saw last week. And shout out to Joe Penix, who tagged Darius Rucker, Hootie and the Blowfish, and got to the bottom of it. Apparently, it is Bulls Bay. Now, I don't know what any of this means, Joe. Apparently, Rucker does something at Bulls Bay that's like a big party, like a big fiesta, and people really enjoy it. And I'm guessing Roy Williams had a really good time there too, and that's why he's rocking that polo.
Actually, I think Roy's got friends in Charleston, and if you're friends with Roy, you probably have a decent golf club membership somewhere. But I don't know if there's much more than that. I do remember when he retired, he had called me, and he was driving to Charleston, so this does track. Or one of the times we were on the air and he called, he was driving to Charleston.
Those are my favorite. Those are always my favorite. We're in the middle of the show. Him or Kevin Keats giving you a call while we're in the middle of the show. Like, they know what we do, right? They know what we do. Yeah, maybe not. All right. Let's go wrap it up for this edition. Let's go Canes. I got the 10. I'm going to save it for the rest of the night. I'm going to put it back on ice. And when the Canes win tonight, I will toast. You watch, Joe. You watch. This is going to be the juice. This is the juice that's flowing that's going to get the Canes to force a Game 7. And from there, you never know what's going to happen. We'll see y'all tomorrow.